runners. All right, around the world, Pope Francis made a surprise appearance this Easter Sunday, greeting thousands of faithful gathered to celebrate the holiday. Fox News correspondent Madison Scarapino has more.
Pope Francis giving an Easter blessing to thousands of people in St. Peter's Square as he continues recovering from a weeks-long battle with double pneumonia. Later, the 88-year-old pontiff greeted crowds from the Pope Mobile for the first time since his hospitalization in February.
It's very great for me to see him, and I feel a bit emotional seeing him.
I'm really grateful to be here right now. I know it's a really wonderful opportunity to be in Vatican City.
It marks the Holy Father's biggest appearance since he was discharged from Rome's Gemelli Hospital last month. He is still unable to speak for long periods of time and is undergoing therapy to help regain his voice. On Sunday, an archbishop read the Pope's traditional Easter message. In it, he called for peace in Ukraine and Gaza.
I appeal to the warring parties, call ceasefire, release the hostages, and come to the aid of a starving people that aspires to a future of peace.
Earlier, Francis briefly met with Vice President J.D. Vance.
I know you've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
The two have been at odds over the Trump administration's immigration policies. In a recent letter to U.S. bishops, the Pope warned the forceful removal of migrants from the country, quote, will end badly. While in Rome, the vice president also met with other top Vatican officials and the Italian prime minister. I'm Madison Scarpino, Fox News.
And here at home, this news hits hard for local Catholics who've been praying for the Pope's recovery since doctors admitted him into the hospital in February.
Good news, Caitlin Pratt is live at Cathedral of Christ the King. And Caitlin, good morning. I know the church will likely be really busy as folks just stop by to pay their respects.
Absolutely. Good morning to you both. And actually morning mass going on right behind me here at the cathedral in Buckhead. And you mentioned earlier this month, or earlier this year, I should say, in February, so many gathered here with special intentions, praying for his health to improve. So I'm sure this is very shocking as Catholics here in the metro area and around the world wake up to this jarring news. As Doug Luzader mentioned, we just saw the pontiff yesterday blessing a crowd there in the Vatican. So let's talk a little bit about his history and how he kind of ushered in a change for the Catholic Church, being head of it since 2013. A lot of firsts to talk about. The first pope from Latin America, the first Jesuit pope, the first to call himself Francis. He was especially known for being humble. While a bishop and then cardinal, he'd take public transportation instead of a private car, and then once Pope, he turned down the palatial quarters for a more modest residence at the Vatican. Earlier this year, we did catch up with some parishioners to talk about what he's meant to them.
Very sad. He's been a dynamic Pope. He has introduced a lot of changes into the church.
Along those lines, he spoke frankly about modern issues, working to make the Catholic Church more welcoming, more inclusive, and notably saying, quote, "Who am I to judge?" when asked about the sexual orientation of priests. So a pope who chose humility over hubris, who was very progressive. That's the latest here. Live from Buckhead, I'm Caitlin Pratt for Good Day Atlanta.
It's been so interesting, Caitlin, just learning more about his life. Such an incredible man. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. We'll see you soon, KP.
It's a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy.
Yeah, we are really sad about it. We come from Australia. We were hoping there was some chance to see him, but then we heard about it when we came in here, and yeah, it's pretty much devastated all of us.
Pope Francis has died at 88 years old. We're going to show you some live pictures outside the Vatican where thousands of people are gathering to pay their respects. Fox's Rebecca Castor is in Washington with more on his final moments and the legacy he leaves behind.
This is really a shock. Just hours ago, Pope Francis was out greeting the faithful at St. Peter's Square at the Vatican, many calling it an Easter miracle for him to be out in public after spending 38 days at the hospital. Now he's home with his Heavenly Father.
Pope
Pope Francis greeted with cheers Sunday as he made his way through St. Peter's Square, waving to the crowd from the Pope-mobile. It was his first public appearance since leaving the hospital in March following a bout with double pneumonia. From the balcony of the Basilica, the Pope gave an Easter blessing, while an aide read his prepared address. It focused on peace and called for an end to conflicts, particularly in Gaza and Ukraine.
He wanted to come back home. He wanted to be with the people, and God granted him that special blessing.
Earlier that morning, the Pope had a brief meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance, who converted to Catholicism in 2019. Vance told the pontiff that he prays for him daily, and Francis gifted him chocolate Easter eggs for his children.
We're praying for the millions of Christians around the world who loved the Pope and admired him this morning.
Francis will be remembered for his humility. In one of his first acts as Pope, he turned down the palatial papal quarters in favor of a more modest residence at the Vatican. He was also considered progressive after decades of conservative leadership. He worked to make the church more welcoming and inclusive, and took a compassionate approach towards the LGBTQ community, famously saying, "Who am I to judge?" when asked about the sexual orientation of priests.
In his simplicity, in his humility, in his easygoingness, these were gifts that he stewarded so well.
As an example of his humility, Pope Francis simplified the funeral protocols for popes before his death. It's likely he'll be laid to rest within the week. At Catholic University in Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
Rebecca, thank you. Here at home, this news hits hard for local Catholics who've been praying for the Pope's recovery since doctors admitted him to the hospital, and that was back in February. Fox 5's Caitlin Pratt is at Cathedral of Christ the King, where parishioners have already started paying their respects.
Parishioners started arriving here at the cathedral in Buckhead early this morning to pray and to also give thanks to the leader of the Catholic Church for the last 12 years. Take a listen.
While we are in mourning for our Holy Father, our mourning is not without hope.
The late pontiff set a different tone for the papacy, known for being humble, while as a bishop and then cardinal, he'd take public transportation instead of a private car, and once pope, he would turn down the palatial quarters for a more modest residence at the Vatican. Parishioners we caught up with this morning say his inclusive and welcoming message made all the difference in their faith.
I became Catholic partly because of Pope Francis. I grew up as a Protestant, but he inspired me with his message and his openness toward my family. I'm like the only Catholic in my family.
He was very clear to remind us that in the church there's a place for everyone, and everyone is welcome and included.
Pope Francis spoke frankly about modern issues and was considered progressive, opening debate on issues.
Pope Francis had a way of getting the church to think outside the box and to look at the wider church and to really focus on the needs of the wider church and to work together to build a church that all were welcome and all were included.
And the Monsignor going on to say that many of us were surprised about his passing, especially after thinking he'd maybe turned a corner, and was addressing so many Catholics there on Easter Sunday, but adding he showed us how to live and to die with dignity. That's the latest here in Buckhead, outside the Cathedral of Christ the King. I'm Caitlin Pratt, Fox 5 News.
Caitlin, we appreciate it. Thank you. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock got a chance to meet the Pope last year in Vatican City. Warnock, who's the senior pastor of Atlanta's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, is part of a congressional delegation to Rome, coordinated through his Senate office. The two discussed what it's like being a faith leader in the public sphere, along with issues in Gaza, Ukraine, and Sudan, along with the need for peace. We will stay on top of this breaking news all day. We're also accepting all reactions. So visit the Fox Local app or fox5atlanta.com for additional updates as soon as they come into the newsroom.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
It's just a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy.
Now, we are remembering Pope Francis this morning. The Vatican confirmed the 88-year-old died early this morning, hours after Easter service. Pope Francis had been battling bilateral pneumonia and other health issues, resulting in weeks of hospitalization. Yesterday, the Pope emerged to bless thousands of people in St. Peter's Square in what would be his last Easter Sunday service. Pope Francis, who was the first Latin American pontiff, was also known as a humble reformer who sought to make the Catholic Church more inclusive. So here is a live look at Vatican City, where the Catholic Church is paying final respects. Pope expected to be buried at the ancient Basilica of St. Mary Major, just outside the Vatican. And in the coming weeks, a conclave will soon begin to elect the new Catholic leader. Good news, Caitlin Pratt is live at Cathedral of Christ the King in Buckhead. Caitlin, good morning. I know that the cathedral will serve as just a meeting place for Catholics throughout the area.
That's 100% correct. Good morning to you, Elise. And we've already seen that in action this morning, the Monday after Easter. There's been 2 masses so far today. They were already scheduled to be happening anyway, but I imagine that more people showed up this morning than they typically would once they woke up and heard the news about the leader of the Catholic Church passing away at the age of 88. We did get a chance to pop inside and listen in as that mass went on this morning. A priest acknowledging, yes, that Pope Francis had passed away earlier this morning at the Vatican, but said this is not a time of sorrow, saying this is a time of joy, of hope. There was a large portrait of Pope Francis there near the altar inside the cathedral here at Christ the King in Buckhead. And let's talk about this late pontiff. Really remarkable since taking the top spot here in 2013. Known for being humble. That was the most driving force about him. Very humble. While a bishop and then a cardinal, he'd take public transportation instead of a private car. And then once he became pope, he turned down the palatial quarters for more modest residence at the Vatican. He spoke frankly and just plainly about modern issues, working to try and make the Catholic Church more welcoming and inclusive. Here's what one of the parishioners had to say as she left Mass this morning.
He was very clear to remind us that in the Church, there's a place for everyone, and everyone is welcome and included.
And she's speaking to that inclusivity that he's being credited with, very progressive, showing humility over hubris. I think that's what he's going to be remembered for. And of course, his last official act as Pope, as head of the Catholic Church, are really meaningful when he was rolled out in his wheelchair to bless the thousands of Catholics who had gathered there to celebrate Easter Sunday. Just what a picture. It just says so much. I'm going to send it back to you, Elise.
Pope Francis died Monday morning at the age of 88. Millions of Catholics around the world are now mourning his death.
Fox News correspondent Rebecca Castor has more.
Christine, Tom, here at the nation's largest basilica, black drapes are drawn to honor the Pope's passing. Preparations are now underway for his funeral, which President Trump and the First Lady plan to attend. Thousands of mourners gathering in St. Peter's Square for a rosary prayer vigil, honoring the Holy Father.
We heard about it when we came in here, and yeah, it's pretty much devastated all of us.
The Pope's body was placed in a coffin during a ceremony attended by church officials. Next, he'll be transferred to St. Peter's Basilica as early as Wednesday for worshipers to pay their respects.
He's also a father for us, someone who cares for us, someone who represents unity. So when he passes, everyone feels it personally.
Tributes are now pouring in from around the world. President Trump ordering all federal and state flags to be flown at half staff.
He was a good man, worked hard. He loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
Once Francis is laid to rest, then the conclave begins, the secret process to select a new pope. Eligible cardinals will gather inside the Sistine Chapel, cut off from the outside world. They can cast up to 4 ballots a day until they reach a 2/3 majority.
As of today, 135, they will vote their first choice. Then they're counted again, and it's the group is getting smaller and smaller until there's 3 or 4.
And after each vote, the votes are burned and smoke is released from the Sistine Chapel. White smoke is what signifies a new pope has been elected. Tom and Christine, back to you.
Rebecca, do we have a timeline between the funeral services and remembrances of this pope and when we could hear about the electing of a new pontiff?
So one of the things that Pope Francis did before he died is that he actually simplified the funeral process. So things are going to happen quicker than they have in prior years. So we're not entirely sure how many days of mourning will take place after the funeral, but we do know that it will just be a matter of days before the conclave officially begins.
And that is quite a process for people to follow. So I encourage everybody to do so. Rebecca, thanks so much for that live report.
Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock is remembering the Pope's remarkable life. Warnock says he has long been an admirer of the Pope, adding his work centered around the poor and marginalized. Senator Warnock met with Pope Francis last year and says the two discussed a wide range of topics, including international wars and what it was like to be a public faith leader. Fox 5 will continue covering all the breaking developments out of the Vatican in the coming days and weeks ahead. We have information on the Pope's incredible life of service, the latest on his tragic passing, and information about what comes next for his funeral and the process of electing a new Pope. You can find all of that on our website, fox5atlanta.com, and our streaming channel, Fox Local.
Millions around the world continue mourning the loss of Pope Francis. Many faithful regard Francis, who died at the age of 88, as a reformer of the Vatican, citing his work to expand roles for women, champion migrant rights, and acknowledge climate change. His death comes just a few weeks after being released from a 38-day hospitalization for double pneumonia and a complex lung infection.
Very sad for the Christianity. He was a very great pope. I'm not Catholic, but I have followed up his work and his engagement. I'm also sad.
When Francis became Pope in 2013, he became the first Pope from the Americas and the first Jesuit pontiff. Cardinals met at the Vatican today to fine-tune plans for Pope Francis's funeral and the conclave to elect a successor. The Vatican says around 60 cardinals participated in the first meeting. The public will have the opportunity to pay their respects when the Pope's casket is moved into St. Peter's Basilica Wednesday. Pope Francis simplified the papal burial rules last year, allowing him to be laid to rest in a simple underground tomb at St. Mary Major Basilica in Rome. As the Catholic faithful mourns the passing of Pope Francis, preparations are underway for his funeral and the conclave that will determine his successor. Fox's Lauren Green reports from Vatican City.
The crowds are getting bigger in Vatican City as people pay their respects to Pope Francis, and preparations begin for the late pontiff's funeral. Francis will be laid to rest this Saturday in a more modest ceremony, reflecting the leadership style he carried as Pope. Breaking with tradition, he'll be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica, outside the Vatican, and home to his favorite icon, the Virgin Mary. Many remembering him as a leader who sought to connect the church with regular people.
I think it's a big loss for not just for the Vatican City but for the entire world.
I do think he was very outspoken on issues. I think his message to political leaders is very important.
Meanwhile, cardinals have begun arriving at the Vatican to attend Francis's funeral and prepare for the conclave, the closed-off secret ballot process of selecting the new pope. The Vatican says around 60 cardinals participated in the first meeting Tuesday. 135 are eligible to participate in the conclave, but only 120 will be selected to vote, and that selection process is secretive. The Pope's legacy will weigh heavily on their decision as they decide the best path forward for the Church. Many of them appointed by Francis himself, and may seek to choose a successor who continues his progressive approach. The public viewing of Pope Francis is expected to begin Wednesday morning, when he is set to lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica. In Vatican City, Lauren Green, Fox News.
Police in Italy are enforcing tight security measures around central Rome following the death of Pope Francis. The Argentine Pope died Monday at age 88 after a stroke put him in a coma, leading to heart failure. Francis will be laid to rest Saturday after lying in state for 3 days at St. Peter's Basilica.
Thousands of people are expected to gather in St. Peter's Basilica Wednesday to pay their respects to Pope Francis, whose body will be in repose near the main altar. Police forces are patrolling St. Peter's Square and its surrounding area on foot and horseback, and more officers are in the area as well to secure the riverbanks surrounding the Vatican.
Taking a live look now at the Vatican, where preparations are underway for Pope Francis' funeral. The Pope died early yesterday after suffering a stroke and heart failure. A public viewing is set to begin in just a few hours. Tonight, crowds are still growing at the Vatican as the Catholic faithful show up to pay their respects to the Holy Father.
Francis will be laid to rest this Saturday in a modest ceremony reflective of his leadership, many remembering the spiritual leader as a man who lived what he preached. The 88-year-old famously shed most of the ornate trappings of the papacy and famed for his simplicity and humility. Breaking with tradition, even in death, he'll be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica, which is just outside the Vatican. The church is home to his favorite icon, the Virgin Mary. Cardinals have begun arriving to the Vatican for the Pope's funeral and the papal enclave to elect a new pope. The Vatican says 60 cardinals met today for that first meeting. Metro Atlanta Catholics are still mourning the loss of Pope Francis.
And this evening they came together to honor his life and legacy at a memorial mass. It took place at the Georgia Tech Catholic Center in Atlanta. People came to pay their respects and pray together. They say Pope Francis was a good leader and are grateful for his time as Pope.
He was a good man, led our community, led our church well, and we're all grateful for the fact that he was able to lead us, and we're all, appreciative for his time.
It will likely be several weeks before cardinals name a successor.
The president of the Catholic League wants the House Ethics Committee to censure Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. In a letter sent to committee members, Dr. William Donahue said that hours after the Pope died, Greene wrote, quote, "Today there were major shifts in global leadership. Evil is being defeated by the hand of God." It's not clear who she's referring to, but as Donahue points out, the Congresswoman has been critical of Pope Francis in the past. In 2022, she said, quote, "Satan's controlling the church." No response yet from the House Ethics Committee.
President Trump is in Rome tonight to attend the funeral of Pope Francis.
The president and first lady will be among the more than 50 heads of state who will be in attendance at St. Peter's Basilica. President Trump ordered flags to be flown at half-staff this week as a sign of respect for the late Pope. Pope Francis passed away Monday after suffering a stroke at the age of 88.
Former President Biden and former First Lady Jill Biden are also planning to attend Pope Francis's funeral. Biden was the second Roman Catholic to serve as U.S. president. He met Pope Francis on several occasions over the years. Back in January, President Biden awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction, which is the nation's highest honor. Pope Francis's casket is now closed after 3 days of public mourning.
Fox News correspondent Connor Hansen has the latest tonight from Vatican City.
Friday was the last chance for the public to pay their respects to Pope Francis. While he laid in state at St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican says about 250,000 people have come to see the beloved pontiff.
Even 1 hour before Pope Francis's coffin was sealed, there were still thousands of people lined up outside trying to get inside St. Peter's Basilica, but it remained remarkably quiet.
We got a look inside as mourners filed through, solemn and respectful, as they prayed for the man who has led the Catholic Church since 2013. Those who made the journey feeling blessed by the chance to say goodbye.
It's a special occasion, very emotional in the Basilica.
Welcoming, having their own journey, wanting to pay their own respects to a man that I loved.
Many we spoke with hoping to see Francis's legacy continue on.
I think he was a good role model. Like, he modelled his life in the way he spoke. I would like to see another pope like him.
Pope Francis requested a simple funeral ceremony that takes place Saturday in St. Peter's Square before he's brought to his final resting place at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome.
The tomb is not a great piece of art, but very essential and very simple. We can see that will be only one inscription, Pope's name, Franciscus.
In Vatican City, Connor Hansen, Fox News.
Let's take you to a live look over St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City. Not many people there now, but it was packed this morning as hundreds of thousands of people came together in the Vatican City to honor and attend the funeral for Pope Francis. He's the 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, and he was laid to rest at St. Mary Major Basilica. The service was attended by a who's who of world leaders, including President Trump and former President Biden. Fox News correspondent Connor Hansen has more from Rome.
Heads of state, royalty, and mourners from around the world paid their final respects to Pope Francis on Saturday. Among those were President Donald Trump and former President Joe Biden. Private talks between Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and Trump took place on the sidelines of the funeral, the White House calling the discussions, quote, productive. The Vatican says 250,000 people packed into St. Peter's Square in their last farewell to Francis.
He wasn't someone who looked down on anybody, whatever it is, your sex, religion, your sexual orientation, your gender, your age.
The pontiff was remembered as a pope of the people and for his legacy of caring for even the most marginalized.
For me, I say he is a saintly man, gentle, a man of peace who wanted peace for the whole world.
In an effort to express his role as a pastor and not a powerful man, Francis insisted on simplifying his papal funeral rites.
He is the most humblest person I've ever met, I've ever known.
Following the funeral mass, a group of people from humble backgrounds, including sex trafficking victims and prisoners, privately met the Pope's casket at St. Mary Major Basilica in a final farewell and reflection of Francis's character. The global Catholic Church now begins 9 days of mourning for Pope Francis. After that, a papal conclave will begin to choose his successor. In Rome, Connor Hansen, Fox News.